what we're going to do is kind of how this is going to work, get a little introduction, introduce ourselves, talk about what we're geeking out on and kind of the intersection of faith and fandom and the geek world. And then Hector, who runs and creates and Faith and Fandom books and website. He was able to go to San Diego Comicon last summer, and so I really want to pick his brain about his experience there. So that's kind of how we're going to go. This is like the fifth or sixth year that North Carolina Comic Con has allowed us to do a Faith and Fandom panel. And it's been really cool to be able to have this venue, to be able to talk about, like 5 years, to be able to do the intersection of faith and what we geek out on. And kind of the point of this panel, why we do this, is really to kind of say you have permission to be both a person of faith and someone who embraces your fandom and whatever you geek out on. That it's not an either or, that you have to be one or the other, that it's a both and, that both these things of faith and being a person of faith can be a part of your life in terms of what you geek out on. And even if you're not a person of faith, even if you're just curious about spirituality or the big questions of life, that we believe that these stories that we consume, these stories that entertain us, can help us go deeper into asking the big questions of what does justice look like? What is good and evil? What makes a hero? What makes a villain? Do I believe in God? If I do believe in God, what is the character of this God who I believe in? That these, whether it's comics or video games or movies, can help us go deeper in asking these big questions. Because what really kind of separates us as humans from the rest of like the created order is that we are able to create stories and reflect on, there's culture in other animals and communication and all kinds of things, but in terms of as a human species, we have this ability to create stories and reflect on the meaning of those. And so that's really, really cool. So why don't we go down the line and share who we are, what we do, and then is what was or is a piece of kind of fandom that helped you go deeper into the life of faith or help you think bigger about these things. It could be something you're doing now or something that kind of sparked that in you way back when. So cool. Kevin, I'll let you go.
Cool. I'm Kevin Schaefer. My first time on this panel, I've been doing panels here though for probably about 4 years now, various ones, the disability one, interviews with comic creators, whatnot. So let's see, what I do for a living, I work for a media company called BioNews Services, which is, it's focused on rare diseases and disabilities. So I'm a writer, so I do a lot of writing for the website there that's focused on my disability, and then I work with a lot of people really all over the world, so it's a really cool opportunity. And then in terms of like geek origins, I know it's cliche, but Star Wars and Batman the Animated Series were like my gateway drugs to everything. And then, yeah, I think Hector and I can attest we're both DC Universe evangelists, so I'm big on that. So even though this season of Titans has been kind of all over the place, it's also really fascinating from it's asking a lot of questions about especially looking at the morality of all the DC Universe shows right now they're much darker, but they're they hit on they're very flawed characters. It's not the clear cut good and evil. It's very really interesting, morally conflicted heroes and villains. So that's what I like about it. So this season's been kind of all over the place, but I would say that's what I'm most interested in right now, though, is all the stuff on that platform.
What was the first Star Wars movie you saw in the theater?
In the theater, Phantom Menace. But I watched all the VHS before then.
Yeah, you don't have to apologize.
I'm a 90s. Well, it's just when I was born, I was a 90s kid. So yeah.
So that was the first Star Wars movie you saw?
Yeah. Well, no. I'd seen the original before, but that was first in theaters I'd seen.
Yeah, cool.
The original trilogy was required viewing in my high school science class.
Oh, nice.
We watched it as a school. So that's nice.
That's cool.
Oh no, I definitely
as a school. Your whole school gathered.
Every person that went through science class in my high school had to watch the first 3 Star Wars movies.
That's an incredible school. Wow. What school did you go to? I want to go there. I am Will Rose. I am a Lutheran pastor in Chapel Hill at Holy Trinity Lutheran Church, and been a part of these panels for a number of years. Started a God Loves Geeks book club in my church, and it kind of spiraled and expanded and evolved from there in terms of reading graphic novels and comics and looking at the philosophical, spiritual, and theological themes within those stories. For me, what sparked as a little kid, the first movie I think I ever saw in the theater was A New Hope in 1977 as a 5-year-old. And for me, just that kind of whole, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, expanded my universe literally in thinking of looking at the stars and asking those big questions about who are we, what's our place, what's my purpose, is there destiny, is there an all good force guiding where we're going. So that helped me and has since been a huge Star Wars fan. And I think what right now is when I look at pop culture and fandom, I enjoy trying to find where God shows up in the least likely places. And for me right now, I'm like really on, like I watch Rick and Morty. I just was at Matt Brady's panel with the science of Rick and Morty. And as nihilistic and depressing as that show can be at times, but also brilliant and funny and hilarious. Even in the midst of that kind of, they even say like point blank, yeah, there is no God, rip that Band-Aid off, Morty. But yet still in the depth of this story, they're still wrestling with what is meaning, the power of family, who do I love, who do I not love, is there meaning, is there not? And so they're still asking the big questions, whether they see the universe as a big, meaningless, chaotic swirl anyway. So for me, I love even looking in there and seeing how they're wrestling with the big questions of things.
Hi, I'm Sylvia McCorkle. I work as a medical data analyst at a military health center. My first brush with, I guess, geekdom is, of course, A New Hope. I'm one of those kids, too. But I was telling somebody earlier, I said I grew up, I said I think I was a Southern Baptist in utero. I grew up across the street from my church. And so, it wasn't like, oh, the car is broken down. It's like, no, you're looking at me from your front porch. Just come across the street and go to church. And fairly strict upbringing, but I guess they felt if I was either at the piano bench or with my face in a book, everything was safe, but they didn't know I was like reading stuff like The Exorcist or, like Christine. But reading The Exorcist as a young kid was, mind-blowing. One, you're learning.
Did you read it before you saw it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And
I straight up didn't know it was a book. Go on.
As someone who has an aversion to rodents, I was just stuck on the whole thing. There's a part in the beginning of the book where they keep talking about they think they have a rat infestation in their attic, and they're just going to go like, oh, are we going to talk about something else besides the rats? Like, get past the rats. Yeah, they got past the rats, all right. But that, being introduced to a different faith, learning about Catholicism and folks basically touching things that they shouldn't touch back in ancient and lands, it was kind of like, wow, there's way more than what's going on across the street at a church. But currently he knows I'm obsessed with The Walking Dead, as you can see, my Michonne shirt, as the television show as well as the graphic novel, even though they ended it on us. But watching how
Fantastic way.
Let's get into it.
Yeah.
Watching how those folks deal with their version of end times, and how one person's version of what's good is not necessarily good in everyone's eyes, and how they have to come to that conclusion, and also dealing with the aftermath of it.
Yeah.
Okay. My name is Hector Miray. I am a pastor in Lumberton, North Carolina, of Vertical Church. It's low-key a Baptist church, but you won't know it. That's on the DL. You have to dig through some paperwork in a filing cabinet to find out. But I'm a pastor there, but I also do Faith and Fandom. It's at least a part-time job, but I go to about 28 cons a year, setting up a booth in Artist Alley of devotionals and Bible studies that are on video games, superheroes, comic books, anime, doing that, and it's my passion project. And even the church that hired me knowing that I'm going to be gone, at least 5 Sundays a year just to do Comic Cons and stuff like that. And they're super supportive, and that's really my passion for what I'm doing with that, is just kind of bridging a gap with a lot of the same heart that everybody here is sharing. My nerd exposure, I think I'm a little more in Kevin's age bracket. Because trust me, I would have seen Star Wars in theaters if I would have been here. But I think Return of the Jedi I was too. So I missed the whole original series. But I think it would have been Ninja Turtles and Batman the Animated Series. Would have been like that thing of, we don't have cable. It's whatever comes on Saturday morning or after school cartoons. And like, I straight remember it being like August or something. The lights were out in our living room. And I remember the first time like the Ninja Turtle theme song came on my TV, and I'm like, what's happening? And I was like, from that point on, and like Batman the Animated Series, that became like my intro into fandom. And because it was the same time the X-Men the Animated Series was dropping as well, and like I was discovering these stories that I loved. And we had a local comic book shop, and my mom would straight up drop me off when the store opened and pick me up when it closed. And so I lived at that comic book shop the entire time it was open on the weekends, and kind of developed my love for that. And that kind of grew up with who I was as a person of faith, that I got involved in church about the same time. And so like my love for both were like neck and neck the whole time, and like they kind of played off of each other in what we were doing, or what I was doing as I was growing. So they've all, like, it's, for me, it's never, I always heard people, like you mentioned, they can't be together. I had a youth group where like straight up they'd say, bring all your worldly music and we'll burn it. And like that kind of stuff of like, and and where they told you,
you're not taking my Van Halen.
Hootie and the Blowfish Cracked Rear View was the one that I had to buy the most copies of, because I'd do that youth group thing of like, bring it, I need this again, I could buy it. But it was that thing of like the culture of growing up where it's saying it has to be separate, and then getting to this age where you realize anything you do that actually has to divide who you are isn't healthy.
Right.
And that you need to be able to embrace who you are and what you're doing. But I think my current, I know I'm beating a super dead horse if you've heard me talk about it before, but honestly, a lot of Tom King's Batman run has been my favorite faith focal point in pop culture the past year or two. Like from an issue where they literally just focused on a verse out of the book of Job. Yeah. And literally the page ends with Batman quoting the Bible. And talking about restarting to stuff with, and it's Tom King and stuff, but even in Tom King and Miss Gerard's Mr. Miracle, there's a lot of really deep faith elements in that I've enjoyed getting into. So I'd say a lot of those things, and all the stuff that y'all have mentioned before is stuff that's deeply impacted me. But I'd say if anything over the last few years, it's been Tom King's run on Batman in comics.
So Hector, not that long ago, you were able to interview, I think it was on Love Thy Nerd and your own podcast, Kevin Eastman with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So as a kid who grew up with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, who then is now talking to Kevin, interviewing him, even him sharing his own faith, that he's a churchgoer and takes his family to church and leans into this God of love. Like, what was that for you? Were you just like totally geeking out? Were you freaking out? What was that like for you?
I had met Kevin a couple Comic-Cons prior to that, but that's the thing. I am extroverted when it comes to like telling people things, but I'm not going to ask anything from anybody. Like, I don't know, it's something I need to work on, but I won't ask people for anything. And so it's Chris Poirier that had been working. If you've been a part of NC Comicons for a while, Chris was volunteer and staff person for NC Comicon. He's the asker.
Right.
So when he just asked Kevin, and Kevin's like, absolutely, let's do it. And even last NC Comicon, we went to dinner with Afua Richardson. Yeah. And just sat around and talked about faith at Burger Fi down the street. And it was just like one of those things. It's something I would have never asked. But hearing Kevin just talking to Kevin Eastman in depth was fun. And it was that geeking thing out, but it was really neat to be able to connect with a creator of something you love so much because if we'd have just been talking about Ninja Turtles, I would expect him to love Ninja Turtles. That's his thing. But like hearing how his faith actually guides that and pushes that was a big deal for me. And then also it was one of those shot myself in the foot situations because at Oak City last year, Kevin was there as well. I think it was last year.
Mm-hmm.
But and they had mentioned about the Faith and Fandom book, so he asked for one that had Ninja Turtles in it. And the only Faith and Fandom chapter on Ninja Turtles is how I don't love Ninja Turtles anymore. And I'm like, and I'm like, Kevin, I will get something to you in the future. Let's not do this right
There's
now.
a book coming up.
book 7.
Reboot Reformation. Here we go.
Ninja Turtles chapter. But no, it was really it was important to be able to have those conversations and see that from that perspective.
Yeah. All right. So Kevin, you mentioned Batman the animated series,
Yeah.
and with DC Universe having all those cartoons on there, is there a particular favorite episode you have that connects with Faith and Fandom, or anything that kind of sticks out for you that you kind of go back to over and over again?
So, well, kind of throughout, so like what Hector was mentioning about like his background in church and everything. So I'll go into grew up in a Southern Baptist church, and then we had kind of a falling out with that one for the end of my high school. Long story, but and then I never lost my faith. But in college, I joined InterVarsity Christian Fellowship, and what I like about that was their whole thing was instead of like the separation of culture and faith, our motto is how is Jesus is relevant to all things, and so that's kind of challenged me a lot of ways to kind of think about the stuff. But with Batman, there's multiple. I mean, I have favorite episodes like Almost Got Him, where the villains tell these different stories how they almost got Batman, and that's a really fun one. If there's any particular moment though from either the animated series or really all the animated universe as a whole, Under the Red Hood. So at the end of it, which if anyone, if you've seen Winter Soldier, you've seen Under the Red Hood. This is the same thing. But
that came first.
I know it did. They one was a copy of the other. But there's a moment at the end where Jason Todd comes back as Red Hood, and he has a gun pointed at Batman, and he says I'm not mad that you didn't go after all these other villains, but why on earth is the Joker still alive when he killed, he separated us and all that. And Batman gives this ridiculously good monologue of if I ever cross that line, I can never come back, as much as I want to kill him, that's the end point, And they reference that throughout the animated series and throughout. I was just rewatching Mask of Phantasm the other night, and Alfred talks about that too. He's because Phantasm obviously goes the revenge way, and Batman never, and Alfred talks about how he says I always worried that you would go across that line, but you still haven't, so that was all I know people point to that as Batman's only moral code. I don't think and actually Danny here, Danny in the back there, Danny and I were talking about a podcast comic book writer back here, we were talking on a podcast one time about how the great thing about the animated series and that version of Batman, even when he would go put take down a criminal, put him in jail and all that, he would use his status as Bruce Wayne to give that person a job or something like that. He was very and that's it. I feel the modern perception of Batman is rooted in the overly Frank Miller kind of thing. Not so much the Tom King's different, but in the movies and stuff, you see the Frank Miller stuff over of just this dark brooding. When in reality, he was a very big part of my looking at morality and spiritual issues of he has a clear-cut moral code. There's a lot of redemption stories in that series and the comics, so that was a big lens for me.
Cool. Sylvia, let's talk apocalypse. Or the zombie apocalypse. What is it about Walking Dead that helps you kind of think bigger and kind of the big questions like spirituality?
The thing that really keeps me there, because I am a day one person. I did not leave during the all-out war or the Glen thing. Yeah. I've been there. The thing that gets to me is that a lot of times the situations that these folks are in kind of remind me of when you're in the military and you're in a combat situation. You're put in with people that you would probably never even speak to on the street, and your life
that's good.
And your livelihood is in their hands. And sometimes you trust them wholeheartedly, and sometimes you trust them just to a certain extent. And just to think of these people living in a situation where it's like you have these quote unquote monsters that are clearly what everyone has been, taught is a monster. Yeah, they're dangerous, but what about the person next to you? What is their level of, deceit or danger? And it's like, it almost seems like you have to be on high alert at all times, because like when they start getting comfortable, something else comes around. And now it's not even the zombies that's the problem. It's the other people. And you have a clergyman there, but on the TV show, this guy, man, he's like a player. He's gotten with this one lady. He's gotten with this other lady, and it's like, dude, do you still practice, or are you just like cosplaying with your with your collar?
Yeah.
So
That's beautiful.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So just it's frightening to think about that. If something happens, not necessarily that a virus takes over and infects all these people, but if something happens, who's going to change the most on the light side or the dark side to survive? That's the thing that I really like about it.
Yeah, and the Greek word behind apocalypse literally means to like unveil or to reveal. So these narratives that deal with whether it's the zombie apocalypse or the robot apocalypse or alien apocalypse, that what happens when this scenario reveals what's truly important to you. So what is it that you value the most? For Rick, it was his family. For others, it's power. It's what does it reveals. Even biblically, the apocalypse doesn't mean that there's this final war as much as it means like what's the underlying reality that we're a part of that's guiding our lives. So that's important to kind of think through those things.
Just with The Walking Dead, like I honestly think I've learned some of the best leadership lessons about what a leader should be, what a leader shouldn't be. From the book and the show as well. But like I think Walking Dead has been one of the best how-to guides on leadership in pop culture.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, I always say that, I'm Team Rick no matter what. And they're like, well, he was stupid to do this, he was stupid to do that. And I'm like, no leader is perfect.
Yeah.
I said I would rather have a flawed leader than someone who is just straight and narrow.
Leadership.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
I said, his heart sometimes takes over, where it's just like, why did you do that? But it's like that's part of being a leader and part of being human.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, in Titans this season, I won't spoil it, but I had a problem with how the Titans react to Dick Grayson in with the decision he made in the past, because it's like without spoiling, they all played a part in this horrible thing that happened in the past, and he didn't come clean with them originally about exactly what happened at the end. Someone died, but they did, he did, and he wasn't clear exactly what happened. And then he comes clean at this part of the season, and they all bail on him after that. Like, how could you do it? And I'm like, you guys were all there too, and you played a part. And also, he's coming clean. I feel like Sylvia said, we're all flawed.
Speech Bruce gives him, when he's dealing with Jason.
Yes.
I mean, that was a beautiful speech about, the truth will set you free. I mean,
yes.
It was such a good thing, and then it's like.
I know. I had a problem with that, and I think I was like, I understand some of them getting in and leaving, but there were other members. I was like, no, you were right there too, and you should at least respect him for coming clean.
But that is a solid point, and spiritually and in life in general. Just because you do the right thing doesn't mean people are going to react the right way.
Right.
Yeah.
So Hector, you were able to go to the Jerusalem of Comicon, San Diego, and you were able to do a panel. Were you part of a panel? They invited you to come and be a part of that, Liam, or were you part of one that was already there? What was your story, and then what was your experience like there in San Diego?
So I got to go to San Diego, and I got my first professional badge from my first professional badge ever for a con was San Diego for the 50th Comic-Con. Like, it's in a shiny box on my wall now. So
Walking Dead theme too.
it was walking. I actually brought Deborah Ulmer, that's one of the volunteers here. She's, about on your level with.
Yeah, she's a Michonist. She's a Rishonist.
Oh yes, she actually had one of our friends commission a Rishon painting. That's Rick and Michonne with their heads together, and there's a pile of body parts and zombie chunks that make a heart behind them. So
Look, yeah.
It was. I brought her back the Walking Dead lanyard from San Diego. But anyway, I'll just say this: I did not get to San Diego on my effort at all. I didn't do anything. It wasn't like anything I did personally. There's a group, and we'll talk about some like-minded groups that are around, but there's a group of folks in California called Geeky Guys and Gals for God, with a lot of G's in there, and they read my books and liked what I did, and they had a contact at San Diego and said, we want you on the panel. So they got me on the panel, which a thing I didn't know existed, the Christian Comic Arts Society, which is kind of a bubble organization for all of this kind of stuff that I didn't know existed, and has been running for 23 years. Yeah. The stuff that's happening you don't know about. The Christian Comic Arts Society has been doing church services at San Diego for 23 of the 50 years that it's been going on. And they invited me to come out and be a part of the church service and to be on a panel very much like this. And then they also had a panel of just getting faith and geek creators together to just have like a workshop hangout discussion time. So they, there was legit, it was like me and the dude that does the Action Bible, and
cool.
there was this swarm of like nerdy faith who's who of people of just that region. But we got to meet other creators and things like that. But they brought me out for those panels, and they had people from their organization pay for my flight and housing and stuff. So it was like, I'm quit. I'm done after this year. I'm like, it's not gonna get better. But I got to go out there for that, and the things I learned first off is that stuff that we're doing like this room right now, is vitally important. Just to be able to have these conversations, just that people can have these discussions, because what cracked me up is not cracked me, but I guess took me by surprise is, when you go to San Diego, you think everything is next level and it's stuff you're never going to see. And you walk the vendor floor, yeah, that's exactly what it is. They had a fully functioning Krusty Krab on the convention floor.
Secret patch. Did you get the secret formula?
But they had built a fully functioning Krusty Krab on the floor of the Comic-Con. It was all. It's exactly what you think it'll be. But when it came down to it, their panel on spirituality in comics was this. Exactly this. Will was, starting this, he said it started 5 or 6 years ago. Will initiated doing these kind of panels and bringing people of different backgrounds, different discussions in to do it. And, he, for this area, I'd call you a trailblazer in that. And what was just really funny to me, I got to San Diego and they're doing what Will's doing. Right. The panel consisted of myself, an atheist, a person that focused on New Age spirituality, Wiccan, and a Jewish person. So that was the panel, and we all sat around and discussed the spiritual things we saw in Marvel, and literally had the same conversations we're having here, and it was really neat just to be able to be a part of that. It was neat to be able to be a part of the one of just bringing all the Christian geek creators together. But then the Sunday morning service, it was 4 of us that were a part of that on the panel up there. A guy who did a graphic novel, the guy who did the Action Bible, a lady who does casting for movies, and then a guy named Louis Serrano that does some other art and books, mainstream stuff. And what was just so neat to me is there are Comic-Cons in North Carolina that have geek church services of the same size of San Diego. So literally you had 180,000 people at San Diego, but the same number of people were responding in North Carolina as at San Diego. So it was a neat experience. And I learned a lot from it, but I think the biggest thing that I learned was that what we're doing here and what each of us do in our own individual effort is not a lower grade or lower version of some big goal. They're the same people doing the same thing we are. They're just in a different city.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things that just I'm encouraged by y'all, but encourage you as well, that if this is something you feel passionate about, what you do now and here and in your community to help bridge that gap and encourage those things is just as vital as anything going on, no matter how big the show is. So I think that was my big takeaway.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think, sometimes we get in our own circles, our own silos, our own little kind of friendship groups on social media, and we don't see what's going on around it. It's similar to like my church in Chapel Hill, since we're right by UNC, has done some work with faith and science and kind of integration that's not either or, but both and how can they work together to create a better conversation between faith and science. And when we first started going at that work and reading a few books here and there, we started like the tip of the iceberg. You started seeing there's so many people that work in that area that you didn't know were doing it. And the same way that comes with like faith and fandom, we're kind of like, wouldn't it be neat if we did some conversation with how we geek out on the stories of Marvel or DC or Walking Dead, and you start asking these questions. Oh, Hector's doing it. That's cool. Oh, they're doing it over here in San Diego. That's really cool. And we're not like recreating the wheel, or I don't think we're trying to like, colonize with our faith into Comic-Con. What we're trying to do is kind of ask some bigger questions that's going on and learn from one another about what there's a lot of common ground and similarities that we can be a part of. And there's so much out there. So there are so many resources that I didn't know getting into this that there are. So there is, I don't know if you have a graphic you want to put up there, but in terms of, there are a lot of, not just faith and fandom, not just what's happening at my church, but there are a lot of websites and podcasts out there that are processing the big questions of pop culture and faith. So you have all these things there that are kind of a part. And this is that conglomerate.
Yeah. This is, if you want to Google this, if you want to see, this is like low-key database. This is not complete in any fashion. But the Christian Gamers Guild wanted to put together a list of people that they've partnered with and worked with and stuff like that. But you can see just some of the images on the graphic. But they literally have this complete list of game designers, organizations, podcasters, streamers, online communities.
Yeah, look at that. There's so many people doing really cool stuff when it comes to how we process our faith.
And
through this medium.
That's one of the big things, is that you can really feel like you're the only person doing it. And then you find out that other people are doing it because God's working, my personal belief, that God is working in people the same way in different places. Like, the same truth is there, and it takes multiple people to get it out there. But there's a big list of that, but like the biggest thing I would encourage too, like there are a lot of other people doing it, but just because other people are doing it doesn't mean you shouldn't.
Right.
So if you've got a passion for that, if you've got something that you're drawn to, if there's a niche group or a people group that you feel called to encourage or reach out to, do it. I meant like with you, how passionate you are with Walking Dead. If you start something just with Walking Dead or find a way to minister to that community, go. I'm going to embarrass her. Miss Skaggs right here. She has daughters that are active in the cosplay community. They're active in this cultural community on a whole. And she wanted to do stuff to be able to reach out specifically to her kids and her friends of her kids, and to be able to do that. And she hit me up about how to get resources just so she can minister to the people at this show and other shows in the region stuff. And what she's doing as a parent, I think, is powerful and special. So whatever people do individually is a big deal.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I want to leave some time for some questions, thoughts, ideas, aha moments that you all have. There's a reason why you guys are here, and if there's something you want to ask or share, we'll open that up sometime. Yeah.
That's funny, you're talking about ministering for children, and apparently I earned my children geek cred by association because my first DM in college was in the movie The Room, eventually, which was, and was, he became my boyfriend after we started playing, and the Dungeons and Dragons group that I'm in now is all clergy or a family of clergy, and it's pretty much like any other D&D game, except for occasionally you have explanations like, okay, so how much is this worth? And it's like, oh, it's kind of like a denarius. But, you know.
Biblical deep cuts, yeah,
you
yeah.
know, and it's you know, it's wonderful to have that.
I'm a part of a D&D group called Holy Crit, and it's all ministers. And my friend of mine who runs Church the Geek podcast, who talks about different things, huge D&D fan, wanted to do specifically an all clergy. I had never played it before. This was my first time, but it's on Church the Geek podcast if you want to check it out. We recorded it. Some of it was really long, but if you like that kind of stuff, you can hang with it. But yeah, this kind of idea of, oh, well, that's not something that this type of people do. Clergy wouldn't do that. Aren't they supposed to, drive the speed limit in the right-hand lane and never cuss? That kind of thing that that they wouldn't do that. To break those stereotypes, to say, yeah, we're a part of these groups and geek out on that stuff is really, really cool.
I always take it back to the thing with the Apostle Paul said in 1 Corinthians 9:22 that I have become all things to all people, all means I might win some. You've got to be where the people are and to be able to encourage them, to be able to strengthen them, and you can't just yell at them or shout at them or do something in effect that do anything to be of encouragement. That you literally have to be with them where they are and be a part of their lives for that to actually be impactful.
There was a first century rabbi who did that, I think, too. Don't you think? Yeah, I think he did that.
No, I wanted to throw something out there about D&D that growing up, it's like one of those things where it's like, oh, I want to play too, and it's like, no, you're a girl, and you're not allowed to play with us. And then it's kind of like, I'm gonna put it out there, you black, we don't do that. You're not allowed to go, and there's no other black kids that are gonna be there, so you're not allowed to do that. And then, my grandmother is like, oh, well, I heard about, what they talk about and that, and, you don't deal with the wizardry and the witchcraft and all that kind of stuff. And I'm just sitting there, I see 11 right there. I was like, I get so jealous when I watch, Stranger Things, and, we're around where those kids' ages were in the show, and I'm going I missed out so much on playing D&D. I was like, it's so unfair.
Yeah. I have an 11-year-old now that because she watches Stranger Things, she was 11 for her birthday. We had a whole 11 birthday party for her 11th birthday.
So good.
It was dope. It was fantastic. But we had a waffle bar where you could decorate the waffle. It was great. Anyway.
Take note. That's a good idea.
But all that is my daughter is able to actually connect with kids over D&D now, where I couldn't have even connected with D&D when social setting. I was ostracized enough for watching cartoons and reading comic books. So to be able to be full D&D and be Hispanic and be in that culture was just no, it's not a thing. But I think what we have now is that you have all these things that have not just normalized geek culture, but have made it a mainstay. And that's the thing. If we continue to ostracize people for the stuff that they're passionate about, if the rest of the world has let that go, we got to be able to actually embrace people too with that.
Yeah, so I guess, Hector, where do you see the challenges out there? You see a lot of Comic-Cons, you see a lot of faith groups interacting with that on both coasts. What are some things that people of faith or churches or communities could do better? It breaks my heart when I hear you share on your podcast that you're at Dragon Con, there's people yelling at people with signs, but you're on the inside with people, relational. I'm not talking about the fundamentalists who are screaming at people and telling them, they're going to hell. But those who are on the inside, what can we do better as people of faith.
Yeah,
on challenge.
the street protests and stuff like that, that just breaks my heart and it makes me cry every time I see it.
Yeah.
But that's one of the things that I've seen so often is like just having a booth and being at these shows is that you can be a safe haven for people that feel like they're being attacked, that they can be welcomed. You can be just like for instance, at another show in Raleigh, there was someone street preaching and being offensive, and a young Deku cosplayer came to my booth. She's like, look, I just need to hear, does God actually love me?
Oh, wow.
Because like someone had screamed at her and done that, and like just being a positive and encouraging force in that. Like for instance, having a booth with books was my way to do it, but that's not everybody's way. There's a group of folks in the Tennessee region. They are the anchor of the Tennessee faith geek community, and all they do is give out free stuff at their booth. And it's church puns and sci-fi puns, but like but they do a science and geek church service on like a regular basis, and they have like Star Wars bumper stickers and cups and stuff that they give out and then every con I've ever been to in Tennessee, they have a Sunday morning church service. So whether it's giving stuff away, because sometimes you give stuff away, people just want to run away from you. Like if you're giving it away, whatever it is, I don't need it. So like, but if you do it right, it's not a bad thing. So just being encouraging with that, like actually having church services or chapels before services before a con. My favorite is to do geek church service at like 1:00 on a Sunday on a con, because like I feel like you're gonna get, if the people that would be at a church, they're not going to be there in the mornings, but you can actually bring more people together. That's my favorite. That's my preference. Yeah. Having panels and stuff like this is great. One thing that I'll throw some love to them. Love Thy Nerd has done some really good stuff lately. If you've not heard of them, they're only about 1.5 years, 2 years old. But they've done some stuff where they go to cons and they give out like lanyards that just say "Love Thy Nerd," and I have some free stuff up here too for folks if you want it. This is my literal personal favorite thing that they've done. They have your cosplay is awesome cards, where you literally just if you see a cosplayer that's in an awesome cosplay, hey, I just want to tell you your cosplay is awesome. And then there's not like a gospel track, there's not like a Bible verse or anything on it. It's just like straight up, I appreciate your cosplay. And what it says is, if you want to encourage someone else, give this to another cosplayer. And it just encourages the cosplay community.
So it's literally loving your nerd.
Yes.
Yeah.
But they do cool stuff. Like they also have ones for like Artist Alley. So your creation is cool. They'll have emergency D20s, where literally they have a cardboard cutout that if you fold it, it turns into a D20. They have emergency D20 character, or they have emergency Dungeons & Dragons character sheets. They have guides to loving your nerd, stuff like that. So they're doing a really good job of like giving people tools to work with, and I think that's really good. But I think honestly, just one of the best things that I see happening is people of faith being encouraging to their communities with that, and that's honestly a big step.
Yeah, and I encourage you to just maybe start a God Loves Geeks book club in your community, in your congregation, in your church. Like say, hey, let's read a graphic novel or a story and read that together and talk about. It's just like a book club, except you're using comics or a graphic novel or a story to kind of get into that
hey, Kevin,
story.
Yeah.
What's been the most encouraging experience you've had spiritually at a con?
At a con.
Great question.
Well, I was going to answer the question about like engaging and stuff. So like, I feel like outside, like the one of the things I learned just in terms of just evangelism is like when you people complicate that word so much, and I think like for me the biggest thing that helped is, so I went to Magnet High School, like very artsy and stuff like that, and like kind of like like a lot of my church friends, they were all in sports and stuff like that. Whereas I had the advantage of like I'm into theater and nerds and comics and all that stuff, so I was able to have those kind of conversations. I'm trying to think of, let's see, a specific con experience. Sorry, you put me on the spot there. Well, actually, I was talking with Mitch Garretts today of like about Mitch. I was like, hey, like I really love Mr. Miracle. I thought it was really good, and he told me like, it was just a personal story. But like as much as Tom was writing it, this was a story I felt compelled to because I was just writing about me and my son, or drawing, so like that, that wasn't even intentional, but like I feel like that came across a little bit too. And I told him I was like, yeah, this was just a really like I got that whole human element there that like you don't see in every story, but that really came across. So that was cool.
Yeah, and you're encouraging me, like you're just like you've been moderating panels for the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Here as well in terms of what you do. It's just so.
Oh, I love that. So yeah. Yes.
This is for the lady on the panel. My friend, and we've known each other for a very long time, since 6th grade. So this is her first con ever.
Oh, yay!
Welcome.
Yeah. All
I love you. So she grew up similar kind of to you in the church community. Grandma, mom, all the same household, very religious, very spiritual. We used to watch Sailor Moon on the phone together and talk about it. So I guess like now it's a little bit different because it's more accepting in the Black community to be a nerd and to geek out. So I guess do you have any advice for like a younger person who has very strict parents who like you can't watch Pokemon because that's devil worship kind of stuff?
They never had a problem when I was at the library. And I don't know why some people don't understand that everything is at the library. So sometimes, you got to sneak and get your fix. I mean, it's sad, but I think that helped me is being able to go. I mean, and even some of the stuff at your school library, you don't have to check it out. You can sit there and read it. I mean, that's what the library's for, not Barnes and Noble, which a lot of people like to do. But yeah, I don't get that. But if they're like monitoring the person, online and stuff, I'd say old school, hit the library and read. And the thing that I like about reading and akin to podcasts versus watching something is that your imagination really can, because I'm a big horror fan at heart, your imagination can just really take you places that watching something or like looking at a video can't take you. And just encourage them to read. Nobody gets mad when you're reading. They really don't.
If I can just chime in too with that, just to say that one of the things too, if you've got folks that are growing up in a strict, because one of the things I hear so often is like kids talking about how their parents have, or even other adults in their life have been negative towards the stuff they're interested in. I would encourage that if you can tell somebody what you actually like about the content of what you're interested in, it changes it, because usually people just see black and white of this is good, this is bad, when it's really not even that. And if you really want to juke them hard, almost everything, let's say 70% of the stories Jesus told were just parables. And that's literally taking a fictional story to tell a good truth. And I was like, you can find good truth even in the most obscure fandoms. And like there's a dude named David Powers out of Myrtle Beach. He wrote a book called Game of Thrones versus the Bible. And he wrote this book that literally compares the violence and sexual inappropriateness of the Bible versus Game of Thrones. Because and his whole point was like not to knock the Bible, but it was just to say, look, if there is good stuff in this series, and I think we can learn from it. So if we're shutting it down just because there's inappropriate comment, he literally had like tally sheets of there are more murders in the Bible. There's more. And it's like, look, we can learn from things. But
oh, I do have one story now that I think about it. So to your question earlier, Hector. So this is the last Oak City. I was going by the Magic Wheelchair table because I knew Christine and Scotty before, because everyone in wheelchairs knows each other. So that's we were friends before that. And I say it as a joke, but like every time I run into someone, I was like, oh, I do know that person. So but anyway, so I was going by the table, and I got talking with a volunteer there, and it turned out, and we just started talking, and this guy had like a liver transplant, and we were talking about it, and that's a common occurrence for me of like, I meet someone and we just happen to start talking each other's life stories and stuff, and like, and the fact that he had been and I know a lot of people with transplants based on the work I do and like other friends on it and all that, so we got talking about that, and like we just hit it off, and so we're talking about doing a story together now, so like that's just the kind of thing, like
creating like a graphic novel or sci-fi or something like that, collaborating. Oh,
yeah,
that's so cool.
Yeah, because he's an artist, so yeah. So things like that happen more frequently to me than like just unplanned. They just like just interactions like that. So cool.
Yeah. Good question too. That's great. Any others? Yeah, in back.
I had a broader than just like geek cultures. How do you, Hector, you mentioned all things to all people. How do y'all specifically, like I'm not super into geek culture. I'm not super into a lot of other things. How do you meet people where they are when you, like, more specifically, I'm talking cultural differences, ethnic background, stuff like that. I know it's kind of broad, but if that's okay to ask, I mean,
Oh yeah, good question. Hector, you do.
I think just one thing is, one of the things that people connect with the most is when they feel that they're heard, and when they feel that they're valued, and when they feel that they're appreciated. You don't have to have any connection with the interest that a person has, as long as you can show them, I'm interested in you, tell me about what interests you. Because like, I personally, if I'm sitting at a booth all day, like I can either sit and hide my Nintendo Switch behind my books, or I can like engage people when they walk by. And one of my things is like, if I honestly just try and engage cosplayers and let them know I appreciate your cosplay and what you put into it and stuff. And let's be super real. I don't recognize 60% of the cosplays that pass by me, especially if they're deep anime cuts. Like, I'm like Attack on Titan, Dragon Ball Z, My Hero. If it's past that, I probably don't know. But like, that's the thing. I'm like, tell me about your cosplay. Tell me about like why you made it, how you made it. Like, just simply. And here's the deal: you can't be fake. If you don't mean it, don't do it. But if you genuinely want to engage people, ask them why what that matters to them, and just engage and listen and don't just react, respond. Like, hear what they're saying and do it. I think that's a universal ministry truth. Is like, if you actually show people love and respect and like intentional focus, you're going to be able to connect with them way better than just with any niche.
It can't be like a hidden agenda behind the question. It's like, I generally want to learn who you are, what you geek out on, and I'm interested in who you are as a person and where you come from and your background. And then that relationship is what flowers into something that goes deeper in terms of understanding where they are, who we are, what we believe, what's governing the universe, all those things. Yeah.
We got 5 minutes.
5 minutes, the other questions.
Or less.
Yeah.
Does anyone watch Titans, by the way? I just want to know if I can talk about that with anyone afterwards.
Titans on DC.
Right on, yeah.
Yeah, and if there's anything after this that you want to find us on the floor or whatever and ask for like reading recommendations or watching recommendations, be happy to share with you what we're getting out on and theories behind it all.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Just to let you know, I have some of those Artist Alley cards and some of the cosplayer cards, some lanyards and buttons if anybody just wants to take those, to take for yourself, give out, whatever. I have some of that stuff with me.
We should do that now. What do we recommend right now?
Okay.
Okay.
What do you recommend, Sylvia? What would you recommend? What are you watching or reading that?
The Good Place is very interesting.
I love it so much. I love it so
And
much.
I went back and watched the Twilight Zone episode that it's based on.
Okay.
And it's
What's that?
very funny. It's I forget the name of the episode, but it's about a guy who.
Message me.
Yeah, I will.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very good because I came into it in the middle. It was streaming, and so I came into the middle of it, and I was like, "This is very interesting." And I'm like, that happened to Eleanor, like that. So yeah, The Good Place. I like watching the shows that give you the origin story, and you're kind of in the current timeline, but then you're learning from the past timeline, like Young Sheldon or Mixed Dish, or like Schooled versus the Goldbergs, like how they do that. It's all like a multiverse, and also the Happy Death Day series.
Yeah, that's a fun one.
Yes.
Okay. My favorite 2 comics out right now, Once and Future from Boom Studios. Are you guys, Hector, are you reading that?
I'm not personally, but Chris has been. And I've been.
Okay, yeah, that's a good
hearing
one. It's about like King Arthur is resurrected by this kind of cult stuff, but the best part of it is this like sort of like imagine this grandma who was, imagine she was like part of the Monster Squad when she was younger. She's like an older, and she's super sassy and hilarious, and her and her grandson are trying to stop this like supernatural plot. But it's by Kieran Gillen, who wrote the amazing Darth Vader run, and Dan Mora, and then Batman: Curse of the White Knight, which is just needs no explanation.
Which I think we need to wrap up and bounce so they can let the next panel in.
Yeah.
Thank y'all so much for being here and being a part of the discussion, and thank you for doing it.